So, hello, Laurence.
Hi, Gene.
It's great to see you. Thanks very much for agreeing to answer the questions about your recent experience as a participant in the Dialogue of Self-Liberation live program. I'd like to start off by asking you if you review the quality of your self-communications prior to being introduced to the Dialogue of Self-Liberation, how would you describe those self-communications?
Well, in retrospect, as I think back to it, I experienced. Now I look back, I can see that there was a lot that was under my radar, essentially, and in that there was, I could say, there were quite persistent and quite invisible things going on in my system that were kind of keeping me small, keeping me limited, and just really habitually circulating around, really.
And how easy was it for you to so I'm going to ask that question again, just one second. How clearly presented and actionable did you find the information that we presented to you on the TDSL Live Program?
I found it very clear, and I think it was also presented in ways that, you know, the clarity of the information was presented in different ways. So if I had different opportunities to absorb it, really, whether that be, you know, you speaking or Peter speaking, or within the meditations, at the end, that we did in between. You know, it was different ways where it was able to be absorbed. So I think it was very clear in that sense.
And what difference have you noticed personally in the quality of your self-communications having been introduced to the Dialogue of Self-Liberation?
I think there's an overall key difference that I would say, and then there's probably different sub ones to that. The overall key difference is gaining a confidence that through learning that system, that I'm going to be able to get to all the things that were previously invisible and habitual. So it's like a kind of a confidence that I'm going to be able to gradually detoxify my thought system, if you like, you know. And that confidence, you know, even though I could say I've got a lot to learn, there's a confidence that that I have been given the clarity to be able to do that.
It's an interesting thing you mentioned, detoxification. Could you elaborate on what you mean by how this has provided you with the tools to be able to detoxify the kind of self-communications that we would engage with habitually?
Yeah, well, I would classify a toxic thought or series of thought processes in me as being things that I have taken on in the past, which essentially are not true, really. And so it's like toxification is like it's like a sort of untruth that's circulating inside my system, and detoxing is getting rid of the untruth and getting to the truth of what's really there.
How do you feel the Dialogue of Self-Liberation works as a tool that can help us to arrive at a greater sense of authenticity?
Well, I guess the essential way is by becoming aware of becoming aware of what's actually happening, and being able to discriminate between what is authentic and what is untrue, really, I would say. So it's a process of awareness and discrimination.
One of the principles that we emphasize in the dialogue of self-liberation is self-compassion.
Mm.
How have you personally related to the way this is emphasized in the TDSL Live Program, and what benefit do you feel developing self-compassion provides for an individual?
Well, that's quite a big factor of it. I think that was something that was surprising and refreshing for me, because I think a lot of the toxic thoughts that I was entertaining before were all to do with the opposite of compassion. They were all to do with negative things that have been said to me in the past that were negative, that I believed, you know, or ways that I have developed uncompassionate attitudes to myself, which really undermine my confidence, undermine my energy, and really don't they're like all the things which came in to inhibit my original potential. My original potential needed to be celebrated and loved, and anything where it wasn't celebrated and loved became sort of toxic in a sense. And so being able to expel all the things that simply stop me loving myself is a way of getting back to what my original potential really has always been. And that needs love, and that needs compassion, and that needs support.
With regards to support, how supportive did you find the process of engaging in the Dialogue of Self-Liberation Live Program?
Well, I found it very supportive. I think, you know, certainly in terms of the engagement and the kind of teaching style, and how we were listened to, and how you know, we were acknowledged and sort of positively received. I think that there was a demonstration of that within the teaching process. So being able to see it in action helps you to sort of, you know, learn it for yourself, I think.
So if more people in the world were to be introduced to the Dialogue of Self-Liberation and were to begin to implement this methodology in their own self-communications, what potential impact might this have within society in general?
My understanding of self-compassion is that if you can be compassionate to yourself, it naturally becomes compassion towards others. So as I see, there's a lot, just as I look at myself in the past and see that toxicity, I look at society and see toxicity and a lack of compassion. So it's a similar process, really. It would bring people more to themselves and their own potential, and they would be able to help support each other to more potential as well.
If you were to describe the Dialogue of Self-Liberation to a friend, what would you describe it as? How would you describe TDSL to a friend?
Well, I did the other day, so what did I say? TDSL is a way of learning to recognize how one is undermining oneself by one's own attitude to oneself, essentially. And that as you learn to recognize how you're undermining yourself with the thoughts that have kind of gone in, you know, and not been in whatever way they've gone in, so we can actually become, we can access our potential, essentially. You know, we can become the people that we really are able to be fully, by gradually recognizing the unhelpful and undermining thoughts that we constantly tell ourselves all the time. So in every moment we're always talking to ourselves, and so in every moment we have a potential for that to be a constructive and helpful thing, as opposed to an undermining thing. So if we can get that more and more all the time, then it's like we're reinventing ourselves, basically.
How would you describe the benefits of the dialogue of self-liberation?
Essentially, I would say the benefits are all to do with it's like taking back control over our who we are and what we can be. And the benefits are that we can actually, by stepping out of all the limitation that we actually impose on ourselves, then we can become whatever we want and whatever we need to be. So that's quite a big benefit, I would say. So that's how I would describe it. Yeah.
If there was a person who was maybe watching this video and they were considering joining the TDSL Live Program, but were maybe a little bit sitting on the fence, they hadn't yet made that decision, what would you say to them?
What would I say to them? And I guess it depends on what they were saying to themselves. I think it would be interesting to hear whether they're actually, speaking to themselves in the very way that that they need to change. If they wanted to get out of that sense of self-doubt. So I might say that I think the essential thing is that it's a very, very simple, it's about as simple and yet as effective as you can get in one package, really. So it's very, very accessible, and yet, the potential within our own lives to do something for ourselves with something so accessible and simple is so huge that it wouldn't be a great idea to not at least give it a go, really, and see what's going on there.
I understand that you have been interested in the subject of self-development for many years and have studied a number of different philosophical approaches and methodologies, techniques, and so on. Did you find that the dialogue of self-liberation was in any way in conflict with any of the things that previously you've studied and that you currently practice, or not?
No, I'd say the opposite. I would say that its simplicity and effectiveness, but particularly its simplicity, means that it actually can integrate with every other thing that I've ever done, really. And I guess one of the reasons for that is it's really down to it's how it's all about how I'm talking to myself in each moment, and it doesn't matter what I'm doing, if I'm meditating even, or if I'm doing any kind of therapy, that is always happening, and so this is that's the simplicity and the effectiveness of it. It's dealing with something that's happening all the time in every moment, potentially, if you tune into what's happening in every moment and realize that you are, programming yourself with the way you're talking to yourself, essentially. So that fits into any situation where you're doing that. Doesn't matter what it is.
So I am aware that you also work as a therapist, Laurence. So could I ask you, please, have you found that the dialogue of self-liberation integrates naturally as an addition to your therapeutic toolbox?
Yes, I mean, for the same reason as I said before, because I'm just applying that to myself, but it also applies to me listening to how somebody else is talking to themselves. So actually through TDSL, I can actually see in real time how they are programming themselves and how they are deciding who they are by what they're saying to themselves, basically, and what they're capable of. So it's it's an amazing tool within any kind of therapeutic situation. Even if I didn't tell them, I can see that, and I can kind of hold that, really.
How do you feel TDSL can help to improve the quality of our communication toward other people?
Well, again, how I speak is, and if I allow an untrue or toxic idea to come out of my mouth and go to somebody else, then that's how I'm affecting the conversation. And similarly, as I receive what somebody else is saying, if I can see more easily the part of it where they are, saying something to themselves that's not true, and therefore, I can also see what's coming to me as well. So it's like in that cycle of communication, it gives me a filter both ways, ultimately, to be able to, as someone said yesterday, to stick with the signal and not the noise.
What is the dialogue of self-liberation?
In my own words, what is the dialogue of self-liberation? It is a method in the present of tuning into the quality of what's happening, and being able to discriminate between what is truly authentic and useful to you, and what is not useful. And so it is actually a way of gradually stepping back into what's going to feed your soul and your mind and body, and not to undermine it.
I think that's great. That's just wonderful. So I'm going to say thank you very much, Laurence, for all your help and assistance in speaking to people openly about your experience of TDSL. And by doing so, I have no doubt that this is going to help to inspire other people to explore the developing of the dialogue of self-liberation for themselves. So thanks very much, Laurence.
Thank you.
Thank you.